What is the United Methodist General Board of Church and Society? Great question. Today I'm sharing an interview with the General Secretary of the agency to learn about its purpose and what it's focused on for General Conference. Please introduce yourself.
My name is John Hill. I am currently serving as the interim General Secretary with the General Board of Church and Society.
What is your agency's purpose?
Our prime responsibility is to give sort of life to seek implementation of the social principles and other statements of the General Conference on Christian social concern.
What would you say is the overall impact of the work of the General Board of Church and Society on the United Methodist Church?
I think in this moment of sort of deep challenges in many communities around core justice issues, our work is to educate and mobilize United Methodists to take action in response to those injustices. And so our board has prioritized 5 areas around climate, health, poverty, peace, immigration, and global migration, all through a lens of racial justice. And so there are just tremendous ways in which our agency, through its staff, through its board, and through its supporters across the connection, have been engaged in their communities around those 5 issues. And that could be electoral education work in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, climate work in the Philippines, or voting rights work in the US. There is just a tremendous sort of interest and engagement from United Methodists wanting to put their faith into action in their communities.
In brief, what legislation has the General Board of Church and Society submitted to the upcoming General Conference?
We have 3 kind of categories of legislation, and I'll go over them briefly and then talk about one of them a little bit more extensively. Our top priority is the revised social principles, and our agency was tasked by the General Conference with considering and bringing back to General Conference a wholesale rewrite, really the first rewrite since 1972 of our social principles. And so we've been involved in what is an 8-year process, but because of the extended quadrennium, really a 12-year process involving listening and dialogue and feedback from United Methodists across the worldwide connection to present to the General Conference a more succinct, a more theologically grounded, and a more globally relevant set of principles that I think is a great gift to this denomination and can really support the next expression of our Methodist witness in the world. So that's one sort of the major category. So we can talk about that a little more fully. The second piece of legislation that I wanted to highlight is our request from the for the General Conference to reduce our overall board membership. We're still one of the larger boards, I guess the largest board with around 62 members. We're asking to reduce that board membership down to 32, both as a matter of stewardship and a matter of governance, while keeping and in fact expanding the amount of Central Conference representation. So more than doubling the percentage of Central Conference members while reducing the overall membership. So that's the second piece that we'd love General Conference to support. And then the third category is all of the resolutions that are in the Book of Resolutions. We had under the original submission deadline, our board looked at and did thoughtful updates to resolutions that would expire under the 8-year rule. Because of the extended quadrennium and because of paragraph 510(2)(a), every single resolution, even those that were just adopted at the last General Conference in 2016, will expire without action by the General Conference. And so we have asked for the petitions that had just been considered in the last General Conference, that we're asking General Conference to re-adopt them as is, so that we can then do a more thoughtful update at a future General Conference, but we wouldn't lose them as operative resolutions. Many of those are kind of foundational to our work around peace in the United Methodist Church, around health access, around poverty. So we want to make sure that those are still operative. And within that bucket of overall resolutions, I would highlight another kind of cluster of resolutions, and those were those petitions that were tabled in the 2016 General Conference when there was the creation of the Commission on the Way Forward, and those deal with matters of human sexuality. Those were petitions that had always been foundational to our work for the rights of all persons, and so we're asking for those resolutions to also be reinstated as resolutions in the General Conference. So those are our 3 main buckets that involve a lot of legislation across the 3 church and society committees.
Let's go into a little more detail about the revised social principles in particular. I know that's an area that many people are talking about.
There were so many folks who had impact on that from our board, from our staff, including some former staff. When General Conference tasked us with considering a revision of the revised social principles, the first quadrennium, it was really a discovery phase. And so we held listening sessions across the worldwide connection, in the Philippines, across Africa, Europe, and the US, and asked 3 questions in each of those sessions and just listened to how the social principles were used in that context, like how they were a resource for mission and ministry, how the social principles sort of spoke into that particular context. What would a more globally relevant social principles look like? As we had those conversations, we heard resonance across the different regions. Took those findings back, and we were very heartened to know that across the connection there was a real deep appreciation for the social principles and a deep understanding of how they can really undergird mission and ministry and be a source of engagement and thoughtful dialogue across on pressing issues of the day. So that is took those findings back to General Conference, and then they asked us to consider a rewrite, which would again be more succinct, more theologically grounded, and more globally relevant. And so the next phase, which was to be 4 years because of the quadrennium, ended up being 8 years, was a writing phase. And we established writing teams for each of the social principles. And in that process, submitted a draft that we put out on our website and promoted out, and invited feedback on that draft. And so those writing teams were made up of both practitioners and theologians. We had variety of ages, certainly a variety of geographic experiences and lived experiences. And so that first draft put out on our website, invited feedback. We had about 2,500 folks who submitted comments, as well as another couple thousand that gathered in groups having conversation about this draft. So the editorial team then took those 4,000 plus comments and integrated it into the final product that was passed by our board and submitted to General Conference in 2019. Some of the major changes I would just highlight: we took the paragraphs, currently the social principles live in paragraphs 160 to 166 of the discipline. And rather than having 6 paragraphs for the social principles, we're reducing that to 4. So there will be a community of all creation, which is roughly similar to the natural world paragraph that there is now. There will be a social community. The proposal includes a social community that in some ways combines the social community and the nurturing community, an economic community, and then the political community. The last community, called the world community, in the current social principles, was actually kind of integrated across all of the proposal, so that all of it would be more globally relevant. And so those are the 4 paragraphs that we're proposing in addition to the preface and the preamble. That's kind of the major structural change within the revision. We're excited that General Conference is finally meeting. We're excited that General Conference will consider this revised social principles. We think it really is a gift to this next expression of United Methodism, that it, when we think about the ways in which General Conference has worked on the social principles since 1972, and in some ways, and I'll say I kind of have a heart for this, it's like this patchwork quilt of language that was adopted and modified and kept over those 40 plus years, 50 years. This allows us to really turn a page on some of the places that we've been in deep disagreement, deep conversation, and quite frankly, fighting. We're fighting over words for the last 40 plus years, and think about, with a new page, a fresh page, how we as United Methodists might express our position, our social witness on these various areas. And so I am excited the General Conference will get to wrestle with this, read it in its entirety, and hopefully endorse it and adopt it so that we can be about giving life to these new social principles in the world.
What would happen if the legislation passed or didn't pass?
So I think one of the questions for us is really the mechanism for how the revised social principles are going to be considered. And I think this is something that delegates are going to have to wrestle with. We submitted it in two forms. One, you can read the entirety of the revision in the ADCA, the original ADCA, as part of our report. And I would also highlight in that ADCA is a much more thorough review of the process that gave rise to these social principles. And I would recommend that for delegates to understand who were on the writing teams, how we kind of held that global connection throughout the process. And then because the discipline requires that every petition only address one paragraph of the discipline, we submitted them as individual petitions as well. So in each of the three church and society committees, there are some resolutions related to the revised social principles. There are also petitions that would amend the current social principles. And so our hope is that given that this was a request of the General Conference, that those committees would give priority to the revision and consider that first and use that as the base text for any additional changes. And then that committee work would then be obviously moved to the floor for the plenary, and our hope is that those could be considered in whole. And given the response that we've received from presentations with delegates in the Philippines and Africa across the US, we're really hopeful that there will be sort of broad endorsement of these revised social principles. There may be a few pieces that the delegates want to tweak and make some changes to, but that there wouldn't be sort of a wholesale reworking of the revised social principles, and that there would be appreciation for the voices and process that created this. So I don't know, we're really hopeful that the revised social principles will pass, and that I think it would be awesome if the General Conference passed them fairly quickly in that the first time that they're together.
Is there any other legislation coming to General Conference that you'd like to highlight?
I know there are lots of conversations around regionalization and conversations around other parts of the discipline, and of course the overall question around funding and the budget for the agencies. And so we're mindful of that and hope and trust that the General Conference will see the value of church and society's work, of our connectionalism, and support that with the funding requests that's come from GCFA for the agencies.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share that I haven't asked you about?
I would just invite folks, if they have questions about our legislation, to visit our website. We have all of the petitions that are on that we've submitted on our website, as well as some great resources around the revised social principles. There's a whole section on the website that has them in multiple languages. I think currently in 8 languages. We're working on the 9th language, and also some additional explainer text, some frequently asked questions, some background and introduction. So if others are asking you questions about the revised social principles, you can direct them to those resources as well. I would highlight that. I've been to enough general conferences to know that there are always surprises at general conference, and so we're excited for seeing how the delegates move in the committee and then what happens on the floor.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with General Secretary John Hill from the General Board of Church and Society. Please comment below and subscribe to get more Emily Explains videos. Thanks for watching.